I don't think it's canon. I really don't think it's canon. Yeah. I don't think Boba Fett's saying that stuff. The clock has been reset. Look at me, I'm Boba Fett. I have a gun, goes pew pew. But that's the video.
It's in the video.
Okay. Hi, it's me again. I know you're on my channel, so you already knew it was me, but like...
Maybe they're new.
Maybe you're new. If you're new here, hi, I'm Alora. I don't think I said that in the last video. I'm Alora. I'm a poet. I wrote a book. I write a lot of poems. This is my channel. And today we're going to talk about why poetry is the ultimate form of expression, which is a controversial take. Because people will be like, no, art's the ultimate form of expression, or theater is the ultimate form of expression, which is like, theater, okay, we can argue about theater. Art, painting. But poetry, that's the key right there. And I'm gonna stand by that. This is the hill I'm willing to die on. That poetry is the ultimate form of expression, okay? Because take it back to back in the day, alright? It all starts with poetry. The Iliad, the Odyssey, the Epic of Gilgamesh. Take it to somewhere else. Africa, ancient West African griots. From the very beginning of African societies, there were Wolof griots. In Wolof societies, there were griots. And these storytellers chronicled the entire history of their villages in spoken word poetry. So poetry has always been around. It's always been a thing. It's always been that bitch. And poetry will always be that bitch because it's the ultimate form of expression. So the reason poetry is so powerful, there's a lot of reasons, and I'm about to hit you with all of them, okay? Be prepared. Do a transition there. Where I go, do a transition. So the direct emotional impact of poetry is so powerful because it has what we in the business like to call... What do we in the business call it? And the first point that makes poetry such a world-changing and life-changing concept and the ultimate form of expression is economy of language. So poetry uses language in the most efficient way. A poem takes a concept or a word or a theory and it takes it down to its fundamental properties and it transforms it into something true and concentrated and beautiful. And so it takes this morsel of truth and then it makes it pretty. So it takes a concept or a fact or an idea, condenses it down to like a stock, and then it makes it beautiful. It's kind of like making like something that you cook, like it's like making a stew. You have to concentrate the broth before you can add in all the vegetables and the shrimp, and maybe you're making gumbo. And so you have to make a roux, you have to have shrimp stock, you have to have all these different ingredients, and you have to concentrate them before you can bring them back up to the final density of the recipe. So poetry is like that. It takes the fundamental goop of truth and transforms it into the gumbo of art. Poetry, it gives a sort of vulnerability and authenticity that other forms of expression have, but they don't have in spades. Poetry gives you that richness of language. It gives you that thoroughness of humanity that you can't always find in other art forms. And I feel like all art forms seek to display this authenticness and this denseness of humanity, but I feel that poetry does it the best, specifically spoken word poetry. Because humanity is so tied to language because we live in what is called a audio-visual society. And we used to live in a text-based society for the 18 and 1917. Well, for the centuries where writing was like a commonplace thing, like especially in Europe where it was very popular, we lived in a text-based society. Before that, we lived in an audio-visual society where your words and your visuals, your sights and your sounds were the fundamental basis of all communication and all art and all background. So we have moved back into an audio-visual society from a text-based society because of the invention of the internet. So we still have books and we still have all these text-based things, but now with the invention of YouTube and TikTok, we seek out information in a format that is no longer viable for simple written documentation. When you have spoken word poetry, it is the most human and most artistic expression of the human condition because it's physical and it's emotional and it has language which our brains are wired to interpret and encapsulate and digest, and it's a magnificent synthesis of art. And I think that's why spoken word poetry is such a fundamental piece of our human existence, and it is the ultimate form of expression. And then poetry uses imagery and metaphor. And imagery and metaphor are unique in that they access parts of our brains that other pieces of art don't really get to access. With a play, you have a script, and that script is in often plain English. So unless you're doing Shakespeare, where he leans into the spoken word of things, where he has his soliloquies and his speeches and monologues, and they're in poetry, which is proving my point. Shakespeare is so world-renowned and so massively successful as a playwright because he incorporated spoken word poetry. Other plays that don't incorporate poetry don't have that strength of language, that strength of imagery, that strength of almost linguistic musicality that spoken word poetry has that other forms of artistic expression do not. And I know you're probably asking, then why isn't music the ultimate form of expression? Because music requires an outside instrument in order to create the level of musicality that spoken word creates without outside instruments. That's why a spoken word competition can create the exact same effect as a concert without any of the instrumentation, because it uses the human form and the human voice and the human face and body as the only instruments. And that takes it back to an ancestral kind of harmony and music and rhythm that we always have to seek as humans, because it is the most fundamental thing that we crave: human connection through art. And spoken word poetry is that art at its ultimate and finest and it's the ultimate form and the fundamental form in the same place, because it's the peak of linguistic expression and the fundamental form of physical expression. And that is a transformative kind of art. And it beats out music because music requires you to use an invention. And invention is a thing that is beautiful and magnificent, but it's also the key contributor to excess. With invention came the invention of capitalism, comes excess. And so we think that music is beautiful. Music is powerful. Music is so commercialized and capitalized on that it is no longer the fundamental art that we all seek and the fundamental human connection we all seek as individuals. And I think spoken word poetry is superior because it is a more inherently human kind of expression. This is purely my opinion. You can disagree with me all you want. As a matter of fact, go to the comments and disagree. I'd love to hear what you think. This is what I think, and I wanted to talk about it. If you disagree, feel free to disagree. I'd love to hear it. I love to argue. Genuinely one of my favorite pastimes. Love arguing. Also, poetry has a cross-cultural appeal, and that you can do it in any language. And I think it's fascinating that poetry can have many different sounds based on different languages, as languages have different tones, different inflections, and different rhythms of speech. And a lot of times poetry incorporates rhythms of speech that are common in other languages that aren't common in the language of the poem, and therefore creates a unity among people of different backgrounds and cultures so that they have a shared linguistic link through that poem. And I think that's very exciting, and I think it contributes to poetry's magnificence, specifically spoken word poetry's magnificence. Poetry is also a powerful tool of self-discovery. So poetry can help you become the kind of person you've always wanted to be. It can transform you from someone who's shy into someone who's open to new things. It can transform you from someone who's angry into someone who is at peace with themselves. It is a transformative art. And I think that expressing yourself through spoken word poetry can help you become a happier, more enlightened person. Also, poetry gives you a creative freedom that you don't always get with other forms of expression. With music, you need instruments. With dance, you need music. With theater, you need a set and a stage. But with spoken word poetry, you just need you. And you can create as much beautiful art as you could possibly conceive of, and no one expects you to have anything else. And I think that's really beautiful, and I think it allows you to use your imagination to an extent that you wouldn't otherwise get to use it to, and it forces your brain to stretch in a way that I don't think people really stretch their brains anymore. And it's really exciting, and I've seen young people discover spoken word poetry, and I've seen the way they change not only as people, but as students through discovering spoken word poetry. And it's really magnificent, and it's really valuable, and actually that was what my nonprofit did when I was running it in high school, and I plan to start it back up again, and hopefully we can change some more lives and change some more brains and help these people undergo exciting new discoveries and exciting new evolutions. Also, spoken word poetry is a tool of empathy building, and that it can help you connect to other human beings in a fundamentally human way. And it can teach you how to understand someone who is so completely different from you that you almost don't believe you're the same person. And I think that transformation and that unification is the epitome of humanity. And I think it's something that spoken word poetry does outstandingly well. The unification of humanity. And I think that it is a powerful tool, and it is an excellent tool. And that's my argument for why spoken word poetry is the ultimate form of expression. Feel free to agree, feel free to disagree, feel free to comment down below why I'm totally wrong and I should go die in a fire. Maybe don't comment that, please, actually. That would be mean. I would not like that if you told me to go die in a fire. But comment, I disagree, and therefore, yada, 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 yada. I'll probably read it. Maybe I'll reply. Maybe I won't. I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to read the comments on these things. But, that's why I think poetry is the ultimate form of expression. That's why I think it's so important and so powerful. And I hope you liked this video, and I hope maybe it made you think about something that you haven't thought about before. And give it a like, thumbs up, give it a comment, throw a tomato at your computer screen and get tomato all over your computer screen, and then you're gonna be like, oh, why did I do that? Now my computer screen has tomato on it. And then go wash your computer screen off and go back to Twitter. Thank you. Bye.
Someone has not heard We Will Rock You.
I have heard We Will Rock You, and fair. That's a good point. I'm not even gonna argue with you. That's valid. We Will Rock You is a good point.